When I was 4 years old, I watched my best friend stab me with scissors in the corner of our kindergarten classroom. But that's not even the scariest part. The scariest part is what we'd been doing together for months before that moment. This is the story of Maya, the little girl who taught me that evil doesn't wait until you're grown up to find you. If you're enjoying these terrifying true stories from Silent Fear, smash that subscribe button and hit the notification bell. Comment below and tell me where you're watching from. I love connecting with horror fans worldwide. And if this story sends chills down your spine, leave a like. Now, let me take you back to 1998, to a small town in Oregon where nightmares wore pigtails. Most of my early childhood is a blur now, fragmented memories that feel more like dreams than reality. But I remember every detail of Sunnydale Kindergarten. It was a small brick building on Maple Street, wedged between a laundromat that always smelled like fabric softener and a veterinary clinic where you could sometimes hear dogs barking through the walls. Room 7 was where my parents enrolled me mid-September after we moved to town following my dad's job transfer. I can still picture it perfectly. Faded alphabet posters taped to yellow walls that were peeling in the corners, a reading corner with moth-eaten beanbags that smelled faintly of mildew, wooden cubbies labeled with our names in Miss Harper's careful handwriting, and tall windows that looked out onto a chain-link fence separating us from the parking lot where parents would line up every afternoon at 3 o'clock. There were only 14 kids in our class, including me. We were a small school in a small town, the kind of place where everyone knew everyone else's business. Miss Harper was our main teacher, a tired-looking woman in her 50s with graying hair, always pulled back in a tight bun. She smelled like coffee and lavender, and she had a habit of sighing deeply when she thought no one was listening. Her assistant was Miss Rodriguez, younger and more energetic, probably fresh out of college with her bright cardigans and enthusiasm that hadn't yet been worn down by years of teaching. But she was only there 3 days a week, which meant Miss Harper was often alone with us, looking more exhausted with each passing day. From my very first day, I noticed Maya. You couldn't not notice her. She sat in the far left corner of the room, near the broken radiator that clanked and hissed like it was trying to communicate in its own mechanical language. The teachers had placed a small blue mat there, along with several bins of Play-Doh in primary colors, and that's where Maya spent every single minute of every single day. It became her territory, her kingdom, a 6-foot square space that no other child dared enter. While the rest of us gathered on the alphabet rug for story time, sitting cross-legged and fidgeting while Miss Harper read to us. From worn picture books, Maya stayed in her corner. While we painted at the easels by the window, getting more paint on ourselves than on the paper, Maya stayed in her corner. While we played on the rusty swing set during recess, pushing each other higher and higher until the chains creaked, Maya stayed inside in her corner. Rain or shine, whether it was free play or structured activity time, Maya never moved from that spot, and what she did there made my skin crawl. Maya would take the Play-Doh, bright primary colors, mostly red and blue but sometimes yellow or green, and craft detailed little figures with a level of skill that seemed impossible for someone our age. Her small fingers worked with disturbing precision, molding tiny arms and legs, shaping heads with facial features that I didn't think a 5-year-old could create. She'd add little details too, hair textures, clothing folds, even tiny fingers and toes. The figures were maybe 3 or 4 inches tall, perfect miniature, people that looked almost alive. Then she'd destroy them. But not quickly. Not in the careless way kids usually smash things. Maya's destruction was methodical, deliberate, almost ceremonial. Sometimes she'd pull the limbs off slowly, one by one, twisting them at the joints before removing them completely, dropping them into a neat pile beside her like she was performing surgery. Sometimes she'd crush the entire figure with her fist, but she'd do it so slowly, applying pressure gradually, watching intently as the colors oozed between her fingers and the shape collapsed. My least favorite was when she'd use the plastic rolling pin, the one with yellow handles that usually lived in the play kitchen. She'd lay the figure flat on the mat and roll over it with excruciating slowness, back and forth, until you could hear the Play-Doh squelch and see it spreading out like a melted person. The other kids called it Maya's Corner and avoided it like it was haunted. I'd hear them whispering about her during lunch when we'd sit at the long tables with our juice boxes and peanut butter sandwiches. "That's where the weird girl sits," they'd say. "Don't go over there, she's creepy." Nobody played with her. Nobody talked to her. She was the weird girl doing weird things, and that was that. Even the boldest kids, the ones who weren't afraid of anything, gave Maya's Corner a wide berth. But I was different. I had a cousin named Danny who had Down syndrome, and my mom had always taught me to be kind to kids who were different. She'd explained to me that some people's brains worked differently than ours, and that didn't make them bad or scary, just different. When I looked at Maya, with her tangled dark hair that looked like it hadn't been brushed in weeks, and the way she rocked slightly while she worked, humming tunelessly under her breath, I convinced myself she must have some condition, some reason for her behavior, and I decided, with all the confidence and naivety of a 4-year-old, that it was my responsibility to be nice to her, to be her friend. My mom would be proud of me for being kind to the lonely girl. After 2 weeks of watching her from across the room, stealing glances during activity time and studying her strange ritual, I finally built up the courage. During free play on a rainy Tuesday afternoon, when the windows were streaked with water and the classroom felt smaller and darker than usual, I walked over to Maya's Corner. My heart was pounding. I didn't know what to expect. Would she yell at me? Ignore me? Tell me to go away? I stood there at the edge of the mat, shifting my weight from foot to foot, waiting for her to notice me. When she finally looked up from the red Play-Doh figure she was crafting, her face split into the biggest, brightest smile I'd ever seen. It was like watching the sun come out from behind clouds. Her whole face transformed. Her dark eyes, which usually looked dull and distant, suddenly sparkled with an intensity that was almost frightening. "Hi!" she practically shouted, loud enough that several kids across the room turned to look. "I'm Maya. Sit down right now. We're going to be best friends." Just like that. No hesitation, no awkwardness, as if she'd been waiting for me all along. As if I was the answer to some prayer she'd been whispering into the universe for months. The desperation in her voice, the hunger for connection. It should have been my first warning. But I was just a kid who wanted to do something good. I sat down on the mat across from her, feeling the rough texture through my corduroy pants, and immediately, without any preamble or explanation, Maya began teaching me her craft. She didn't ask my name, didn't ask anything about me. She just launched straight into instruction mode. "This one needs to be short," Maya instructed, her small hands working the blue Play-Doh with practiced efficiency. "Really short, like this tall." She held her fingers maybe 4 inches apart. "And make the head big, bigger than normal, like this." I mimicked her movements, not understanding the significance, just trying to be a good friend and follow along. "This one needs a big nose," she continued, switching to red, her fingers flying as she shaped and molded. "Really big, and make the body round, fat, like really fat." We sat there in that corner by the broken radiator, the smell of Play-Doh mixing with the chalky scent of the classroom, and the musty odor from the old radiator itself, and Maya taught me her specific craft. Each figure had to look a certain way, specific heights, specific features, specific body types. She was incredibly particular about it. If I got something wrong, she'd shake her head impatiently and make me start over. No, the ears have to be bigger, way bigger, make them stick out. Or, the arms need to be longer. This person has long arms. It took me about a week to realize what we were doing, and when I did, a cold feeling settled in my stomach. That short blue figure with the big head? It was Marcus Chen, the smallest boy in our class who sat in the front row and always raised his hand first. The fat one with the big nose? That was Mr. Peterson, the custodian with the beer belly who always yelled at us for running in the halls and leaving messes in the bathroom. There was a tall, skinny one with pigtails. That was Sarah Mitchell, who sat next to me during snack time and never shared her cookies. We weren't making random figures. We were making specific people, our classmates, our teachers, the adults who worked in the building. Every single person in Maya's life was being recreated in Play-Doh. I'd estimate we made about 20 different figures total. Roughly 16 were kids from our class or the other kindergarten rooms down the hall. 4 were adults, teachers, staff, the crossing guard named Mrs. Chen, who worked outside and always wore a bright orange vest, and Maya had specific methods for destroying each one. It wasn't random violence. Each person's effigy was destroyed in a particular way, and that way never changed. "This one gets squished," she'd say, pressing the Marcus figure flat with her palm, grinding it into the mat until it was paper thin. "This one gets torn apart." She'd slowly dismember the Sarah figure, dropping pieces into a pile, counting them as she went. Arms, legs, head, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. The Mr. Peterson figure always got rolled, slowly and methodically, until it was completely flat. The weirdest part? The teachers completely ignored us. Miss Harper would walk right past Maya's corner during activities, her shoes clicking on the linoleum floor, and not even glance our way. Sometimes I'd see her looking in our direction, but then she'd shake her head slightly and turn away, like she was purposely choosing not to see what we were doing. Miss Rodriguez tried once, early on, to get Maya to join story time. "Come on, sweetie," she'd said, crouching down by the mat. "Don't you want to hear about the hungry caterpillar?" Maya had just stared at her with those dark eyes until Miss Rodriguez awkwardly stood up and walked away. After that, she gave up too. We were invisible in that corner, free to do whatever we wanted. In hindsight, I realized the teachers had probably tried to help Maya when she first started, and had given up after meeting resistance from her or her family. But at the time, it felt like we existed in our own little world, separate from everyone else. After 3 weeks of this ritual, after destroying hundreds of little Play-Doh people, I finally asked the question that had been building in my mind. It was a Wednesday afternoon, late October. Rain streaked down the windows in thick rivulets, and the sky outside was so dark it felt like evening, even though it was only 2 in the afternoon. Most of the other kids were at the art table near the back, making Halloween decorations, pumpkins, and ghosts cut from construction paper. Maya and I sat in our corner, surrounded by dozens of destroyed Play-Doh figures, the mat stained with ground-in colors. "Maya," I whispered, leaning closer, "why are we doing this? What's it for?" She looked at me with those dark, intense eyes and smiled. It wasn't her usual bright smile. This one was different, knowing, almost smug. "It's voodoo," she said simply, like she was telling me the sky was blue. Voodoo. I'd heard the word before, probably on TV or in a movie, but I didn't really understand what it meant. Maya explained it to me right there in the corner, speaking in a low voice so the teachers wouldn't overhear, but she really opened up in the kindergarten bathroom later that same day. We'd gone during activity time, just the 2 of us, telling Miss Harper we needed to use the restroom. The bathroom was tiny, 2 stalls with doors that didn't close properly, 2 sinks with perpetually dripping faucets, and a mirror that was cracked in the upper left corner. It smelled like industrial soap and something sour that I couldn't identify. Maya locked us in the far stall, sliding the little metal latch into place, and sat on the closed toilet lid while I stood there, confused and a little nervous about why we were hiding in here. The fluorescent light above us flickered and buzzed. "My brothers taught me about voodoo," she whispered, her voice echoing off the tile walls in that unsettling way that bathrooms do. They're in high school, 9th and 11th grade. They watch horror movies all the time when our parents aren't home. Movies about voodoo and curses and black magic. They told me all about how it works. Her eyes were gleaming now, excited, like she was sharing the most wonderful secret in the world. She explained the concept in terms I could understand. The figures were voodoo dolls, effigies. When we hurt them, we were sending that pain, that energy, out into the universe. And if we did it enough times, if we really believed with all our hearts, the voodoo gods would smile down on us and make it real. They'd take our actions and transfer them to the actual people. The things we do to the dolls will happen to the real people, Maya said, her voice barely above a whisper but filled with absolute conviction. We can hurt anyone we want. We can make them suffer. We can even kill them if we try hard enough. But why? I asked, genuinely confused and starting to feel scared. Why do we want to hurt people? These are our friends, our teachers. Maya's expression darkened. Her face, which had been excited and animated, suddenly turned cold and hard. She looked older somehow, not like a little girl anymore. Because they deserve it, all of them, every single one. She told me then about her first month at Sunnydale before I'd arrived, and I started to understand how the other kids had bullied her mercilessly, called her weird Maya, creepy girl, smelly Maya, how Marcus Chen had pushed her off the swing so hard she'd scraped her knees bloody, how Sarah Mitchell had organized the other girls to exclude her from everything, even sitting near her at lunch. How Emily Rodriguez, who we'd heard about but I hadn't met yet, had started a rumor that Maya ate bugs. How the teachers had watched it all happen and done nothing. Absolutely nothing. "They're all awful," Maya said, her small hands clenched into fists so tight her knuckles were white. "Every single one. They hurt me. They made me cry. They made me scared to come to school. So we're going to hurt them back. And you're going to help me. You're my friend now. My only friend. You'll help me, won't you?" I didn't really agree. These people didn't seem that bad to me. Sure, Marcus was kind of pushy and Sarah could be bratty, but they were just kids. But Maya's intensity scared me. The way she was looking at me, with those desperate eyes waiting for my answer. I was afraid of what she'd do if I said no. Afraid she'd turn that anger on me. Afraid I'd lose my new friend. So I nodded. Agreed. Became her partner in whatever dark game this was. For the next 3 weeks we made figures and destroyed them daily, sometimes doing the same person over and over again. Maya kept track of everything in a little spiral notebook she hid in her cubby, written in the shaky handwriting of a 5-year-old. Who we'd made, how many times, what we'd done to them. She showed it to me once, and seeing all those names listed out like that, with tally marks next to them, made me feel sick. Then, in mid-November, everything changed. It was a gray Tuesday morning, the kind where you can't tell if it's going to rain or snow, or just stay miserably cold. Miss Harper called us to the alphabet rug for an announcement, which was unusual. Usually, we started the day with the Pledge of Allegiance, and then went straight into calendar time. Her eyes were red and puffy, like she'd been crying, and her voice was shaky. "Children," she said softly, crouching down to our level, I have some very sad news about Emily. Emily Rodriguez, no relation to Miss Rodriguez, had been absent for 3 days. She was from the other kindergarten class, but we saw her sometimes on the playground or in the cafeteria. She was one of the popular girls, pretty and confident with blonde curls and a gap-toothed smile. The kind of kid who always had friends around her, who always got picked first for games. Maya hated her most of all. We'd made more Emily figures than anyone else. I'd lost count, but it must have been 30 or 40 over the weeks. Maya was particularly creative with Emily's destructions. Sometimes she'd twist the figure until it was completely deformed. Sometimes she'd burn it by creating friction with her hands, rubbing the Play-Doh so fast it got hot. She'd even mixed Emily's Play-Doh with dirt from the playground once, grinding it together until it was a disgusting, muddy mess. "Emily is very sick," Miss Harper continued, her voice shaking, and I saw tears forming in her eyes. "She has something called leukemia. It's a disease that affects the blood. It's very serious and very rare, especially in someone so young. She's at Sacred Heart Hospital downtown, and the doctors are doing everything they can, but—" She paused, swallowing hard, trying to maintain her composure in front of a room full of 4- and 5-year-olds. "She might not come back to school. We might not see Emily again." The room went silent. Not the usual chaos of 14 kindergartners. Complete, terrible silence. Some kids started crying. Others looked confused, not really understanding what death meant. I felt something cold grip my stomach, a feeling of dread so intense I thought I might throw up right there on the alphabet rug. We'd made Emily dolls, lots of them. We'd destroyed them over and over, and now Emily had cancer, leukemia, a disease that Miss Harper said was very rare. How rare? Rare enough that it seemed impossible for a 5-year-old to just randomly get it. Glanced at Maya. She was sitting perfectly still, but there was something in her expression that made my blood run cold. She was smiling, not broadly, not obviously, just a tiny upturn at the corners of her mouth. A small, satisfied smile. Like she'd just won a game. Like something she'd been waiting for had finally happened. The voodoo had worked. A week later, it got worse. Much worse. Miss Harper, who'd returned to work after giving us the news about Emily, slipped on wet leaves in the parking lot during pickup time. I was waiting for my dad by the chain-link fence, watching the cars pull up one by one, when I heard the scream. It was loud and sharp and full of pain. I turned and saw Miss Harper on the ground, saw her leg bent at an angle that legs shouldn't bend, saw her face twisted in agony. The ambulance came, sirens wailing, lights flashing. They put Miss Harper on a stretcher and loaded her into the back. Took her to Sacred Heart, same hospital as Emily. I heard one of the paramedics say her leg was broken in 2 places, maybe 3. She'd need surgery. We'd made lots of Miss Harper figures too. Maya particularly enjoyed destroying those because Miss Harper had once yelled at her for refusing to participate in class, had grabbed her arm and tried to physically pull her away from the corner. Maya had twisted and pulled the Miss Harper figures with extra violence after that day. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay in my bed in our apartment on Oak Street, in my room with the glow-in-the-dark stars on the ceiling, staring up into the darkness, thinking about Play-Doh figures and broken bones and cancer. My mind was racing, making connections I didn't want to make. We'd killed Emily. We'd broken Miss Harper's leg. The voodoo was real. It was actually real. We had power over people, the power to hurt them, to kill them, and that made us murderers. The guilt consumed me for 5 days. I couldn't eat my chicken nuggets at lunch, couldn't focus during story time, couldn't play on the swings. At home, I'd burst into tears randomly, for no apparent reason, and my parents thought I was just upset about Emily and Miss Harper. My mom would hold me and tell me everything would be okay, that Emily was getting the best treatment possible, that Miss Harper would heal and come back to us. If they only knew. If they knew what I'd done, what I'd been part of, they'd hate me. They'd think I was a monster. On Monday, during recess, while the other kids were outside on the playground screaming and chasing each other around the jungle gym, I stayed behind. Told Miss Rodriguez, who was substituting for Miss Harper while she recovered, that I didn't feel well, that my stomach hurt. She felt my forehead, didn't find a fever, but told me I could stay inside and rest on one of the nap mats. When everyone was gone, when I could hear their distant voices through the closed windows, I stood in the empty classroom by the tall windows overlooking the parking lot, where afternoon sun was streaming in, and I confessed everything to Miss Rodriguez. Through sobs and gasping breaths, tears and snot running down my face, I told her about the voodoo dolls, about Maya's corner, about how we'd been making figures of people and destroying them, about Maya's notebook with all the names and tally marks, about how we'd made Emily figures and now Emily had leukemia, about how we'd made Miss Harper figures and now Miss Harper had a broken leg, about how we'd killed Emily and maybe killed others too, and it was all my fault for helping. I was hysterical, barely able to speak, clearly having a complete psychological breakdown. I expected comfort. Expected her to hold me and tell me it wasn't real, that voodoo wasn't real, that I was just a confused little girl who didn't understand that correlation wasn't causation. Miss Rodriguez's reaction was not what I expected. Instead of comforting me, instead of gently explaining that voodoo isn't real and Play-Doh can't hurt people, she got angry, really angry. "How dare you?" she hissed, her face turning red, grabbing my shoulders hard enough that it hurt. "How dare you disrespect Emily and Miss Harper like this, making up these horrible stories? Emily has cancer, do you understand that?" Cancer. Miss Harper broke her leg. These are real tragedies and you're sitting here telling me you caused them with Play-Doh. You're a horrible little girl for saying such things, for even thinking such things. She dragged me by the arm to the principal's office, pulled me down the hallway so roughly I almost tripped, but nothing came of it. The principal, a balding man named Mr. Sullivan, who I'd only seen a few times, just looked at me with disappointment and sent me back to class with a warning about making up stories and wasting people's time. Neither he nor Miss Rodriguez seemed to understand that I genuinely believed what I was saying, that I was terrified and traumatized and desperately needed help. Desperate and alone, feeling like no adult would understand or help me, I went to the only person who might. Maya. I found her in the corner during quiet time, working on a new figure. This one looked like Miss Rodriguez, with her curly dark hair and round face. "Maya," I whispered, sitting down on the mat, my voice still shaky from crying. I told Miss Rodriguez about the voodoo. "I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to tell on you. I just felt so guilty and scared, and I thought she'd help us and—" Maya's hands stopped moving. She didn't look at me. The Miss Rodriguez figure sat half-finished between us, one arm still unformed. For a long time we sat in silence, broken only by the radiators hissing and the distant sounds of kids returning from recess. Then, slowly, Maya turned to face me. Her expression was blank, unreadable. "Are you really sorry?" she asked quietly. "Yes, I swear. I'll do anything to make it up to you. Please don't be mad at me. You're my only friend." Maya smiled. That cold, wrong smile that didn't reach her eyes. "I have an idea," she said. The next morning, Maya's backpack looked unusually full, bulging at the sides. I noticed it when she came into the classroom, struggling under its weight. We sat in our corner during free play while the other kids played house in the dramatic play area. Rain pounded against the windows in sheets. The classroom smelled like wet wool and crayons, and that particular smell of too many small children in one room. Maya unzipped her backpack slowly, deliberately, looking around to make sure no one was watching us. Then she reached inside and pulled out a kitchen knife. Not a butter knife, not a plastic toy. A real chef's knife with a blade at least 8 inches long, gleaming under the fluorescent lights. The kind of knife adults use to cut raw meat. "Here's what you're going to do," Maya said calmly, her voice as casual as if she were explaining a game. "You're going to take this knife. Wait until recess when Miss Rodriguez is alone and, here, come back inside and tell her you don't feel good again. When she comes close to check on you, you're going to stab her 16 times. That will prove you're really sorry. That will prove you're really my friend, and it'll make everything right with the voodoo gods." My heart stopped. My whole body went cold. Even at 4 years old, even believing in voodoo, I knew this was insane. This was wrong. This was murder. "No," I said, my voice barely a whisper. "I won't do that." Maya's face changed. The mask of friendship dropped away completely, revealing something cold and angry underneath. She reached into her backpack again and pulled out a pair of small sewing scissors with red handles. "Wrong answer," she said. Then she stabbed me. Not a poke, not an accident. A real, violent stab into my upper thigh. The scissors went in deep, maybe 2 inches, and the pain was like nothing I'd ever felt before. It was hot and sharp and overwhelming. I looked down, saw the red handles sticking out of my leg, saw blood already soaking through my pant, spreading in a dark stain. I screamed, loud and long and full of terror. Other kids screamed too. The room erupted in chaos, and that's when Maya grabbed the kitchen knife. She pulled it from her backpack and lunged at me with it raised above her head, this tiny 5-year-old girl with tangled hair trying to murder me in the corner of our kindergarten classroom. Her face twisted with rage. But Miss Rodriguez was faster. She tackled Maya from behind, wrapped her arms around her, wrestled the knife away while Maya screamed and kicked. Someone, maybe the art teacher from next door who heard the screaming, called 911. I was rushed to Sacred Heart Hospital, same hospital as Emily and Miss Harper, the same emergency room, 12 stitches in my thigh. The doctor said I was lucky she'd missed the femoral artery by less than an inch. If she'd hit that, I could have bled out before the ambulance arrived. I still have the scar, a jagged line about 2 inches long that I see every time I change clothes. A permanent reminder of Maya and her voodoo corner. Maya was taken away that day. Police came, social workers. I heard later that she was institutionalized, sent to a psychiatric facility for disturbed children. My parents wouldn't tell me where or for how long. They wouldn't tell me anything about what happened to her. We moved to Washington State 2 weeks later. My dad said it was always part of the plan, but I think they moved us to get me away from Sunnydale, away from the memories. We never talked about Maya again. It became this unspoken thing in our family, the thing we didn't mention. I never saw Maya again. That was over 25 years ago now. I'm 30 years old, married, with a daughter of my own starting kindergarten next year. Sometimes I look at her playing innocently with her toys, and I wonder if any of her classmates will be like Maya. I wonder if I'll know the signs, if I'll see it coming. I've tried to find out what happened to Maya, searched online, looked up news articles from 1998, asked my parents during family dinners, but they won't tell me, which means it must have been bad. Really bad. The kind of bad that parents protect their children from even when those children are adults. Sometimes I still wonder, was the voodoo real? Did we somehow cause Emily's leukemia? I've tried to tell myself it was just coincidence. leukemia happens. Accidents happen. But the timing was so perfect. Too perfect. And the way Maya smiled when she heard about Emily. I'll never forget that smile. I'll never know the truth. But I do know this. Some childhood friends aren't friends at all. They're monsters wearing pigtails, waiting in corners, smiling and inviting you to play. They're darkness wrapped in small bodies. They're proof that evil doesn't have an age requirement. Thanks for listening to this story from Silent Fear. If this terrified you, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss another true horror story. Comment below and tell me where you're watching from. I love hearing from you. And leave a like if this story gave you chills. Remember, not all monsters hide under beds. Some sit next to you in class, offering friendship and asking if you want to play. Stay safe out there and trust your instincts. Sometimes that weird kid in the corner isn't just weird. Sometimes they're dangerous.